Hello everyone, my name is Janis Weaver, aka The Connector, and I'm here today interviewing and speaking with Bonnie Kyle. And Bonnie's going to tell us about her passion and her business and who she can help and how she does that. So thank you for joining us today, Bonnie.
Well, thank you. Nice to be here.
I'd like to know, what is your passion? Like, how did you get to be doing this?
Great question. My passion actually started for as long as I can remember. My passion is helping people.
Right.
So in that is not just the sense of there's hundreds and millions of ways to help people in our life. But one of the things that really stood out for me is I have 25 years in social work and as my background, and
Wow.
One of the things that I really enjoyed and I discovered was helping people find ways to live in less painful ways.
Okay.
In actual fact, trying to help them find ease in their everyday life. And that is where my key passion is.
And also maybe in getting to that goal is an easy way to get to that goal.
There's a great easy way. So part of that is over those 25 years of research is
Right.
finding what processes worked
Right?
and what processes didn't really necessarily work the best.
Right. And for
Right.
different people, different
Different.
things work for different people. So this might not be for everybody, but it's going to help a lot of people. Or am I off the track on that?
Sort of yes and sort of
Okay.
no. So here's the amazing thing. So one of the tools that I discovered is this process called prime potential.
Okay.
And prime potential, you're right, it isn't for everybody. There has to be a certain level of readiness.
Correct. So it could be for everybody, but they have to be at a
They have
proper
to be at a
place
certain
to
level
take
to
advantage
be
of
able
this.
to really get the depth of
Okay,
it.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned your background, your 25 years of experience. So your
Yeah.
skills and training that you've taken for this?
So
Prime potential?
25 years, and in that 25 years I spent 13 years as clinical director for residential treatment centers.
Wow.
And so in that scope, I was privy to almost every type of therapy that's out there.
Okay.
Worked with high-end psychologists, therapists of all walks,
Okay.
and so a lot of training in that.
Yeah.
And so again, social work. And then I discovered, like I said, this prime potential, and I went off to BC and had, I think it's over 150 hours direct time learning of this skill, along with, I think I'm into 250 hours of training.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was an intense program. And the amazing thing is in all of that experience and working hands-on with a lot of various types of problems, I have never seen a tool
Mhm.
that could create as much outcome, measured outcome,
Right.
as this tool.
And how many years ago was that you
That
took
discovered
that
this.
program?
I think I took the training in 2007. or
Oh, so it's been a while
2008.
you've been doing this. That's
Yeah,
great.
so that was the beginning of the training piece, I believe.
Okay.
And I took the actual process itself, let's see, I think my daughter was with too, so 7 years ago.
Okay. So you've gone through this whole thing
I
yourself.
went through it
How
myself.
did you find it? Like, how did you come across it?
How did I come across
Yeah.
it? Well, a colleague of mine who's a psychologist, a well-known psychologist in Hull, had, her friend was a facilitator in this
Okay.
work, and he is an amazing man, Rick Jackson, and he's worked with people in the world such as Nelson Mandela. And,
Get out.
Yeah, but
I
not
love it.
necessarily giving this
No,
process.
no, but still,
But
that's
he,
cool.
But yeah, he was one of Canada's first delegates to go over and welcome Nelson into office.
Nice.
And he's with the Dalai Lama a couple of times.
My favorite guy.
So Rick did the work on me, and he is one of the most amazing, intelligent men I've ever met.
Neat.
And I sat there and I was analyzing every single second that he was working with me, going, okay, well, this is that theory, this is this
Yeah,
theory.
yeah.
That couldn't have profound change. And I walked out of there, and the change is so subtle and so deep and so profound, the brain can actually trick you that nothing actually happened. But what happens is you get to be the core of who you truly are. So earlier, before we started taping, you made a mention about you wanted to work with authentic people.
Yes. Authenticity is very important to me.
Well, here's an interesting thing. People aren't necessarily aware of who they are authentically.
Well, there's, yes.
And so what is authentic?
Yes.
Right? So it's really, what this tool can do for some people is take away all the layers of constrictions that we've built over years and help them, allow them to be who they truly are.
That's the culturalization that John Heaney actually speaks a lot. He's a colleague of mine. He speaks a lot about the culturalization, and really to become, I think, your authentic self, you have to peel those layers away to find who you are at the core. And it sounds like this Prime Potential does just that.
Yeah, sort of, because peeling away, you kind of think of traditional therapy, right? Which is what I used to do and be part of, and you take away that onion layer. And I love that onion thing because you know what, it's so true. Each layer makes you cry. Right?
Yes,
You're taking
it
away,
does.
it stings your eyes, and you go to a therapist, and you go 1 week, and you're like, okay, and you get partly out. And what I loved about traditional therapy is something we used to call doorknob therapy.
Okay.
Right? So you meet with your client for like 50 minutes is usually, or kind of an hour, right? So you spend the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, how have you been, and you sort of get warmed up. Then you might touch on what a juicy nugget might be. And then you just start backing out and do some skill development for the next session. And then as you're saying goodbye, the client has their hand on the doorknob and say, oh, and by the way, I feel a little bit suicidal, so see you later.
Oh, gosh,
and off they go.
Wow.
And so
you got that 50 minutes and that's it?
That's it.
Yeah.
And so doorknob therapy, the big juicy piece is at,
at the doorknob.
And what this process does is very different. We don't go from the outside in.
Okay.
So imagine, if you will, if you were born a pure crystal,
Okay.
right? In its pure, beautiful essence.
White light, yeah.
White light and just pure. And as you proceed through life, every shock, every bang, every little jolt you have puts on a layer of paint.
Yes.
To protect you.
Right.
Right? And so as you're at this point in life, how many layers of paint do you think you would have?
Quite a few. It's not a little item anymore, it's a boulder.
It's a boulder, right? But what would happen if we went in and melted away that first layer of paint? What happens to the other layers of paint?
I would think it all would either go off or in. It's going to come off somehow or other.
Come off, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's where we want to go, and that's what this work absolutely does, is it
like
goes
that.
in and finds the earliest shock to your nervous system, and we clear that.
And everything else collapses.
And everything else starts to
That's-
collapse and go into line.
So that's what makes it unique.
That's what makes it unique.
Compared to anything I've heard about.
More than that, too.
Okay.
So
Tell me more.
basically, we have this logbook, but
Okay.
what makes it unique is that we work on systemic impact, profound depth,
Right.
cellular change,
Like
with
that.
stunning speed. Okay? But what this book does, and this comes with my social work part, is the thoroughness of the program itself.
Right, a real A to Z.
A real A to Z. We have some theory, but one of the things that we do here is we do benchmarks.
Okay, what is a benchmark?
So we start with a snapshot of where you are right now.
Okay.
Right, so we're going to assess what your costs are to you as you're living with these constrictions before we do the work.
Okay.
Okay?
So identifying the
We
constrictions.
identify
Okay.
the cost it is to you to live the way you're living right now.
Okay. And that could be the health, stress, your addictions.
Your
to all
overall
that.
sense of being.
So you start with where you're
We
at.
start with where everybody's at, and we'll use imagery such as, filling in this circle as to how much of your life you're living exactly the way you want it.
And what about people that are not quite sure what they want?
Well, we get through all of
get
that.
through it,
We
okay.
get through all of that, right? So, and that's actually one of the biggest problems.
Yeah, people don't know.
We don't, and we have this illusion of I want to be happy.
Right.
And I want that. I want what's on TV, or I want something, and I'm not sure, but I'm not happy. What I am sure is I'm unhappy.
Right.
So we really need to take a snapshot of what's not working,
Right.
and we got to get that really, really well sounded for somebody. Otherwise, they're not going to flip their behaviors.
And what I'm finding too is a lot of people are looking outside of themselves to get whatever it is, the things that we buy, the trips we go on, whether it's a shopping addiction or anything, we're looking for that inner happiness.
Yeah.
Externally.
External.
So it sounds like what you're offering is
And
a
we're
way.
also blaming everything externally.
Yes. It's not my, I'm a victim.
This happened to me.
I'm a victim, or I have no choice. I'm powerless, I have no choice.
Yeah. And that's actually, it's funny that you say, and we're jumping ahead a little bit,
Mhm.
but eventually where I get to is getting to that point of when we are powerless, hopeless, and helpless. That's our victim state.
And that's the depression, I've been there.
And from there, we have created all sorts of coping.
Yes.
And I'm going to get to that a little bit.
Okay,
later.
good.
So we're still here, and we're going to take, we use metaphors.
Mhm.
And so to take a really thorough assessment of a cost, I use a metaphor. And metaphor is so strong and powerful, a snapshot of how somebody feels about their life.
Right.
Like, for an example would be, my life is like a garden, and the weeds have been taking over.
Yes, metaphors are
Right.
really powerful that way.
Very
Yes,
powerful. And
yes.
so in doing all of this assessments, we're actually working with both sides of the brain.
I like that. Okay, that's the reasoning behind it. All right.
Well, the reasoning to have both behind and also to really encapsulate what it is our current costs are.
Right.
Because sometimes we just are so functioning
Mhm.
and plowing through items that we're not really taking that cost.
No.
Right.
And a
So-
lot of people don't even stop to kind of even take a minute for themselves to think about, are they happy? Are they where they at? You know.
Or they just, what is it? People have this belief, and I've talked to some people of, well, that's just life. You just have to
Yeah,
suck it up.
slug
and
through
just-
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Slug it
And that
through.
explains, I think, why a lot of people, when they get to as they get older and near the latter part of their life, all these illnesses and things crop up that don't really need to be there. They, in a perfect world.
There's a certain part of life that does happen.
Yeah.
But there's another part of life the more constricted we are,
Mhm.
the more at dis-ease we are.
Yes.
Which creates disease.
Exactly.
So the scientific reason why that happens is our cells, our bodies have 50 to 70 trillion cells.
Yes. Mind blowing.
And so each cell has two states of being, open, which is
Mhm.
growing,
Mhm.
or closed, which is in a protective state. And when a cell is in a protective state and closed, it starts to die.
Okay.
Okay? As humans, we need an ebb and flow,
Right.
right? And that's why we sleep, we have rest periods. It's not necessarily a full closed, but we need that ebb and flow.
Right.
But if you got locked and jammed and stuck in a nervous system about fear or in a protective stance, then our cells, and there's certain parts of our bodies that stay like this. So if you're going through life in a complete knot,
Yes.
always worried about what's going to happen next, is the shoe going to drop,
Yeah.
then yes, you're more open to disease
Mhm.
as we get older or as
Right.
in your youth.
And I recall up until the last few years, living, not knowing at the time, but living in a state of fear and worry. And it does take its toll, for sure.
It does, big
That's
time.
amazing.
Big time. So we have these measurements, and from there, what the unique piece of this tool is that those measurements go on all the way through.
Okay.
And at the very end, we do a comparison.
All right, that's interesting.
So-
So you sit down with someone, you explain the overall picture of how this works, and then you work with the people going through this book. Is that kind of how it goes?
That's part of it.
Okay.
That's part of it.
Sorry, I'm jumping the gun.
No, it's a really good question. It is part of it. And so yes, this is a tool that we use
Right.
alongside.
Okay.
And just on a therapeutic base in my clinical background, this tool in itself is unique
Okay.
because it's so comprehensive.
Right.
And as we're doing measurements at the beginning, we give people indicators to measure about change on the ongoing in between
Okay.
sessions. And then we measure at the outset, at the end. And that gives you outcome measurements.
Okay.
And so it's not going to somebody so many, not to knock any other therapies because they all have different
Mhm.
times and places and purposes.
Exactly.
However, often you leave going, well, did that work?
Yeah.
Did that really help me?
Mhm.
And there's not that measurement tool for you to actually look back and reflect and say, here it is. There's concrete. It's not somebody telling me I changed. Here is an absolute measurement that there's been an outcome.
And because you mentioned it's very subtle, the fact that you started here and you've recorded and I don't want to say analyzed, but you've really hunkered down as to where your starting point is.
Mhm.
Even if the outcome is a little more subtle, you can see it here.
You can see it,
Oh,
and
that's
then it
excellent.
becomes that it's not so subtle, because the ego will make it subtle.
Yes.
And that's what we're also working with, is
Right.
the ego will say, well, no, I was almost there anyways.
Yeah, yeah.
Or, and so when you look back at your benchmarks, you can say, no, this is how bad it
Yeah,
really was.
exactly.
And this is how I'm feeling. Oh my God, yeah. There was such an
Amazing.
amazing change. And so, yeah, so that is part of the uniqueness.
I like that.
The other part is that the founders, this process was created by a gentleman named Steve Davies, Dr. Steve Davies. He was a psychologist, and he was in partnership with Lynn Sumida and Don Smith.
Okay.
So Steve was Canada's first NLP Canada director.
Cool.
Okay, and so he worked and was trained directly with Bangor and the NLP creators.
Wow, that's neat.
That was his training, and same with Lynn. Lynn is a choice theory, William Glasser Institute, senior faculty. And Don Smith is the founder of I Am Technology.
Do you want to explain what NLP is for those that might not know?
Sure, neuro-linguistic programming.
Which means?
Which means really working with the brain and how we're acting and how our body flows with that. And there's a lot of therapies that came out of neuro-linguistic programming it's a complex program.
Yeah,
actually.
it is.
It's kind of hard to explain in 2 seconds, but it really does work with people on reflecting and doing a pacing, and then also helping to change some behaviors. And what Steve and Lynn found was, although that they were trained in that and they were giving that, no matter what therapies that they had, people were reverting back. So you had
Right.
some change and then you'd flip back.
Yeah.
And you know NLP, you know who's famous for that is Tony Robbins.
Okay.
Okay? So Tony Robbins' work is mostly NLP work.
Okay.
Okay, and he's put his
He changes people's states. I've seen that in action.
states of being,
Yeah.
and that's really using neuro-linguistic programming.
Okay.
Okay, and he's at the heart of that. And as a matter of fact, one of my colleagues who's trained in this used to be his manager,
Wow.
and said that there's what Tony has. This actually goes deeper.
Right. This goes deeper than what Tony does. And Tony's goes pretty, it's a fairly good tool as well,
Pretty-
what he teaches. But yeah.
So what we do in that is, I think where the depth is because we go to what the core restriction is. Then we kind of deal with all the fear that's patterned around there and all the ways that you've developed to stay out of that fear. And then we help the brain rewire.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Your transmitters.
Yeah, so we actually rewire the neurotransmitters.
That is pretty cool. Mechanic.
It is a little bit mechanical.
You're going to get in my head.
We do, in a big way. And we help kind of recreate those, because what happens is what gets fired together gets wired together.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I would love to own that one, but I believe I've heard other
I haven't heard it
people
before.
say that. And I heard it on What the Bleep Do We Know?
Oh, that's a great
Scientist.
movie. I highly recommend that.
Quantum physics, yeah. So, and Bruce Lipton. And so it's true. What fires together gets wires together. And what does that mean in our life is basically when you're under the age of 6 and you're watching your environment, our frontal lobe is developed by our environment.
Okay.
Okay, that's the only thing. Everything else is biological, DNA driven. Our frontal lobe is highly developed by what's around us and receiving the informations of our environment.
Right.
So if you are subjected to, say, early violence,
Right.
okay, so you're seeing this, and what happens is what gets fired together is, oh my God, a large bang. I get frightened and I need to go hide underneath the bed.
Right.
Okay, so basically then what gets fired is a pattern of being is when there's a scare, I gotta go hide myself.
Right.
Okay, and so as we get older, that pattern just gets developed into high-tech ways of when you're at a party and you're scared, and our feelings of scared could be triggered by different means, we're gonna go hide.
Right.
So how our fear can get triggered in different means, and this is where choice theory comes in. And choice theory, William Glasser said that basically we have 5 genetic needs that are genetically driven. And that's the need for love and belonging, a genetic need for fun, genetic need for freedom and power, and our need for physically survive.
Physical safety kind of.
Physical safety. So how the brain works, I wish I could get up and do my whiteboard.
Yeah.
How the brain works is that our reptilian brain, which is our fight and fear, which is in the back, can overtake, and just because I do have a graph here, but
Okay.
can overtake the frontal lobes and can actually take over the whole limbic system. And if you had just eaten, it would stop your stomach from processing the food, take all the blood up to your muscles. The blood that's in your brain, which I understand is our brain holds the greatest capacity for blood, drains out of our brain and goes into our limbs.
Right, so we can run away from that tiger.
If we need to do it, right?
I gotcha.
Okay. So that's, and that's common to everybody. But what's not common to everybody is the same thing happens when we are at a risk of losing our love and belonging, our perception of think love and belonging. Your kids are now in their 20s, but when they were little ones on the playground, and JK or 5, she's not my friend anymore, right? And they have a complete, they have a meltdown over the sake of not being love and belonging, right?
Not having their needs met.
Right. And it's a genetically driven need, because what happens if we're not part of the group? If we don't belong anywhere?
No tribe.
No tribe. What happens when we have no tribe? We die.
Yeah, that's right. We need the tribe to survive.
We need the tribe.
Yeah.
As little kids, what happens if you're a 2-year-old and your parent's not there?
Yeah.
Right? So if they don't love and belong me, and that's a genetically driven need
Yeah.
on an animal basic that comes out, and that's our instinct, that we need to belong somewhere in order to survive. And here's the thing, there's a scientific research piece, it came out, was I believe in World War I, there was an orphanage of all these babies, and the need, and they were dying, they were having failure to thrive, except for these few that they couldn't understand. And the short of it was, they did understand. They found out that there was a cleaner that came in at night, and she would touch each of these babies, and those babies survived.
Wow.
And all the other ones, they had everything that they needed, except for love and belonging.
Yeah.
And the same thing for fun. So when we take away fun from monkeys, there's been research programs on that, and they're our closest related animals. When we remove fun from them, there is a failure to thrive.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right? And our need for power. As humans, look across all the wars, the religious wars. Our power is our sense of significance, our sense of who we are. It's not power over you.
Right.
It's the power of my significance, my value.
Right.
Right. So if you start taking away my value, then who am I? And then we start to have another layer of failure to thrive, or we can, or we challenge and we can risk our life in order to achieve that certain level of.
Well, that's why I guess some of these people are willing to die for religious causes or
What they believe
wars
in.
or whatever. Exactly.
Yeah,
They
which
die.
is also our sense of freedom too.
Yeah.
And we will. Who wouldn't in this room die for a sense of freedom? Don't take my freedom away from me, right? But freedom also can be a subtle thing, so it's not always that extreme. When you had a long day at work and you come home, what's one of the first things you do?
I usually try to just get into my comfy clothes and relax. Because
Exactly.
I've been wearing this, not mask, but I've been having to act a certain way when I'm out there, dress a certain way, conduct myself in a certain way, and I can just kind of take a deep breath and go, whew, okay, now I'm in my
So that's your need for freedom.
Right.
So you shed off the other thing, and then you become free.
Yeah.
So that's meeting. So the question about our needs is not about whether or not we meet them, it's how we go to meet them.
Right.
And so once they get sort of jarred, then things go out of balance. And here's the other piece, is that, and this is a nice example, is these are the needs, and when we have physical survival in the middle,
Right.
things get out of balance.
So you mean if we're working from a survival mode, then
When
those
we work
things
from
around us,
survival mode,
Okay.
exactly.
everything else gets out of whack?
Gets out of whack.
All
Or
right.
we might have it all miswired that in order to have power, I miss out on love and belonging.
Ah, okay.
And if I want to have freedom, I lose out on my fun. So different people have it wired, miswired different ways in our brain. And what we want to do ideally after the process is we want to put the authentic self in the center.
Yes.
Or as I say, your state of being.
Yes.
Right? And then everything survival comes out and
Yeah.
has a balance.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean it doesn't come into focus every once in a while. If you're driving down the 417, somebody cuts you off, you want to have that little bit of fear to react and get back in the proper lane.
Right. And
And
it's
they go back
interesting
in.
how I look at that diagram because it reminds me of, is it the atom?
Yeah,
That's kind of cool.
that is kind of cool.
Very
That
neat,
is cool.
thank you, that's a really easy way to understand that.
Yeah, so that's what we really want to do.
So how, you mentioned the process, how long for someone who's really inspired by this would it take them to work with you to achieve those goals? Is there a timeline involved, or is everybody
Yeah.
different?
No.
Right, depending on what they bring to the table.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Okay, so the sessions themselves, in order to create the most profound change,
Mhm.
is 4 sessions.
Okay,
These 4 sessions happen over a period of 3 to 4 months.
okay.
Now, how can that kind of change happen in one session? And actually, I have clients who have one session, walk out and go, as a matter of fact, I just worked with a lady who was in her 60s,
Mhm.
who's in the health fields,
Mhm.
has experienced lots of different therapies and processes. After her first session said, oh my God, I've never experienced anything like this in my entire life.
Wow.
And she was able to reconnect with a lot of deep, warm emotions that she had disconnected from. I guess that's the best way I can sort of summarize without getting into anything personal.
Well, I have a personal question on that, because some of us don't allow certain emotions. For example, fear, or not fear, anger. For example, I was raised that you're always to be happy and you're not allowed to express anger. So, thus being I'm an adult and I don't feel that I have a lot of anger, but it's an emotion that everybody has, so it must be deeply buried. Because I don't allow it to come out, it just doesn't register on my scale.
Well, one of the things, anger is an interesting expression, and it's expression of energy. And one of the things that people don't recognize is depression,
Yes.
is depressing anger.
Okay, because I've had that over the years.
Yeah, so
They are linked then?
They are
Okay.
linked.
Interesting.
they are linked because you're depressing,
Yes,
right?
keeping it at bay.
You're keeping everything in. And it's a funny thing about what I've learned about emotions as they come up, the one that, and I'm sure you've heard about that, is to simply allow them
Mm-hmm.
and to get out of their way.
Right.
Because then but the more, here's the best analogy, when you watch somebody who's trying not to cry,
Mm-hmm.
there's 10 times more energy.
Yeah.
But compared to somebody who just like,
Yeah.
and they let it all out and they just let the tears come and it flows through them.
And then there's that relief.
And then there's a relief. But the more you're,
Yeah.
it's harder, it's tougher, and it's taxing on the body. But
Yeah.
the more that you just allow the emotions to go wave through you, because really they are energy.
That's right, they are energy and motion.
And we really,
Emotion.
I think in the 80s, and certainly in my clinical background, we did, and I don't want to dismay some stuff, but basically, we used to say, we're helpless to our energy, to our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Emotions are just emotions, and we are helpless to them. But with cognitive behavior therapies and so many other therapies we learn, and the new science is our thoughts create an emotion, which
Correct.
create a behavior.
Yeah.
So we want to go in, and part of this work is going to core beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get to core beliefs, then we get to educate ourselves about how our thoughts are working,
Right.
right? And what thoughts, and one of the first work that I do before I get into this is I do a prep guide with people.
Mm-hmm.
And in this prep guide, I look at their negative, what thoughts aren't working for them.
Right.
And you're probably well balanced, but I really want to get at what's not working, what the negative thoughts are that's holding us back.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to check in on those, because that's what's showing us what's not working. That's where a lot of our constrictions are, a lot of our
Right.
meanings are, and we delve into there. Because once we get a hold of what thoughts
Right.
are, and we sort of start detangling them,
Yes. And being aware of them.
being aware of
That's
them,
a
and then
big one. It's
detangling,
just,
yeah.
sitting back going, and then catching yourself when you're having a thought. Now that you're becoming more aware and saying, oh, okay, that's how I'm thinking, that's not serving me, I need to shift that.
Yeah.
Or what's behind that, or
Yeah.
dealing with that.
Yeah, and Byron Katie, I don't know if you're aware of her.
I'm familiar with her.
Yeah.
Not really well, but.
Fabulous woman. She is actually, Eckhart Tolle says that he is the what and she is the how.
Oh, interesting.
And she can bring you to consciousness in 4 simple questions by questioning any thoughts that cause you discomfort. So if you
Right.
have a belief that causes you discomfort, then what she does is a query. And it really makes a lot of sense, because if you if you go directly in on and challenge a belief, what do you do? If I say, you know, your belief in purple isn't good, you say,
I get defensive.
you get defensive and you come right in and you fight. But if you question and you bring it to query, then that allows the ego just to actually filter through and do the questioning and not come into counterattack.
Okay.
So it would be, give me a thought, my neighbors hate me. So
Right.
we'll say just
Yeah.
something obscure. My neighbors hate me, is that true? And you do a yes or no.
Okay.
And, you know, so it's, yes, they do. And then the second question is, do you absolutely know
Yeah.
for sure that they hate you?
And what evidence do you have to support that
Yeah,
belief?
and you know, and at the end of the day, are you really in their head? Or are they just miserable people? And can you really
Yeah.
know 100% that they hate you? And
And even if they do, who cares?
who cares?
That's their issue.
That's right. And then it's, from that point, it's then holding on to this belief, how does it feel in your body?
Because
How
that's
do you
where we
feel?
store everything, right?
Yeah,
It's in our body.
what happens when, how do you feel when you believe that thought that my neighbors hate me?
Mhm.
So then I feel awful, I feel tight, I feel weak, I feel expansive or non-expansive. And you get into touch with how you feel. And then she has this, the third question is, who would you be without that thought?
Mhm.
And then you just realize who would I be without that thought? So then from there, she has a trailer, which is really great. I'm aware that there is people. So we have a little bit of background noise. So that is one of the resources I certainly use to help people detangle the brain.
I'm just sort of looking over the notes I wanted to go through with you. You've described what people can expect, you've described the process, the outcome, what they can expect. Can you show us via an exercise of how some of this might work? Is there something you'd like to?
Yeah, I do. I have a are you going to?
I'm a willing and-
You're willing, okay,
Yeah.
so one of the exercises I want to do, and we haven't really touched on it, it's touching on the fear part.
Okay.
And one of the interesting things about fear is that it often is attached to the very thing we want.
Oh, I never heard that before. Okay.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. That's where self-sabotaging comes in. And this is the cycle of where we get really stuck. So,
Okay.
you know, what might be one of your greatest challenges right now, personally or professionally, if you're comfortable in?
A challenge or a fear?
Challenge.
A challenge. For me right now, it's getting more clear on my career path.
Okay.
Is that?
So is that something right now that's holding you back?
It's slowing me down a bit.
Slowing you down.
I kind of have an idea, but it's a little fuzzier, so I'm trying
Can I
to.
borrow your pen?
Yes, your pen. I'm trying to get a little bit greater clarity on that. I'm getting, each day and each week, I'm getting closer and closer through conversation that I have with people.
So clarity on.
Clarity on how I move forward as the connector.
Okay. So what you really want right now is, in your life, is to have clarity of what it is that you do. Or clarity in
How do I
really want
express it, I guess?
how I move forward.
How I
So
move forward
What
with
is
that.
it that you really want right now?
What do I really want right now? I want to be able to shift into being a connector and this business of helping others, particularly women entrepreneurs, particularly people who are introverted and a bit shy when it comes to connections, and to share that with them and build a business around offering that service.
Okay.
That answer your question?
So, we're going to try this one.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
That might not be the best example for
It
you.
might not be, but it might,
Yeah.
but it might be a light version.
That's
Okay.
fine.
So, and you've been working on this for how long?
I guess I've been working on it seriously for the last year, 6 months to a year.
Last year.
Yeah.
And you find sometimes you're struggling with it?
Yeah, I've gone down a few different paths. Is it this, or is it this, or is it this? So, and then I'm getting greater clarity, as I move forward. I'm just a little bit impatient sometimes. I want to, let's get it going. But,
Sometimes you're impatient.
yeah, sometimes I'm impatient with it. I kind of see the picture of what it's going to be down there. It's just a matter of fine tuning it, honing the message, creating the tools to help people in that regard, and putting it all together.
Okay. And what are some of the other behaviors that are holding you back?
I would say, what's the word when you delay things?
Procrastination.
Thank you. Procrastination. Overwhelmment. Sometimes I get too many balls in the air, or I say yes to too many things. Focus. Staying focused and on task in order to complete something, because I am doing multiple things at multiple times.
Okay.
Bit of frustration sometimes.
That just gave me oodles.
There we go. Good.
Okay. So now what I want you to do is actually just imagine getting everything you want. So,
Mhm.
invite yourself to close your eyes for a moment, because that helps tune out the excess, the outside world and stimulants. So just go there. So you have getting what you want. All the best parts of getting exactly what you want. So what is that like for you?
It's moving forward in a very focused manner. It's feeling like I'm controlling time and not controlling time, but controlling what I do with my time in a very beneficial way for myself and those that I'm working with.
And how does it feel to be focused? What's the best part of being in a focused manner? How's that the
I
best
think
part?
it's more feelings of accomplishment.
So when you feel accomplished?
Yeah, like I'm actually setting a goal or an intention or a vision, and I'm moving forward and not getting digressed or I have, what is it called, shiny object simplex sometimes, complex, where something interesting over here is going on, so I get diverted from what I really should be staying focused on task for. So I will be accomplishing more.
All right, so back to getting everything you want.
Yep.
You'll be accomplished. And if you're accomplished, how will you feel if you actually get to the complete level of
Right.
accomplishment that you want for yourself? How
Right.
are you going to feel? What is that like? You're completely accomplished. What is that like?
I'm doing what I love to do. It makes my heart sing. So it's a feeling or an emotion of joy and happiness and freedom. A sense that I am living my life authentically and on purpose. What I am doing is it's just fun and joyful. I'm
Beautiful.
interacting with people that are similar, they're authentic, they want to be of service, and we're having a lot of fun doing it.
Great. Beautiful picture. Now imagine that you have all of that and you're in it. What's the worst part about getting it?
The worst part of
What's
getting it.
the first thing that comes to mind?
Just, I like to celebrate the acknowledgement of that, but then it's wanting to co-create more, create and co-create more. Like what's next?
What's next?
What's next? Because I always like to be moving forward and evolving.
So here's the thing, if you reach that absolute level of accomplishment, what else would there be? Is that the question?
In a way, yes. Maybe it's the fear of, oh no, we're at the end. Oh, I guess my time here's done.
So think about that.
So would that be a fear of...
So why would your ego, who set out to protect you,
Right.
ever allow you to absolutely get to that level if it believes that there's nothing after it?
Other than death. Not that I have a fear of death.
No, but...
But that, for a lot of people, fear of death.
That's right, so...
Yeah, interesting.
So an interesting piece
Very
there, right?
interesting.
So there's a certain level of success you get to, and then it unravels,
Right.
right? And so you talk about procrastination. What's the worst part of being procrastinating?
Well, procrastination, it always feels like things are undone. I'm not, I can't find things. I spend more time looking for things because I have put off putting systems in place that will serve me.
And how do you feel?
Frustrated. There's probably some anger underneath that frustration. Even
So
if
what's the
I'm not.
best part of feeling frustrated? Oh, sorry, what's the worst part of feeling frustrated?
Worst part of feeling frustrated. I find it makes me short-tempered sometimes. I get and maybe outside of, myself. I always direct it to myself first, because I'm usually the root cause of why I'm procrastinating. But sometimes that can affect other people within my circle. If I happen to be having one of those days and I can't find things and I'm frustrated because I've been procrastinating and I'm not meeting my obligations that I say to people I will do.
So you become impatient.
Yeah, and that might flow over to a relationship that I have close to me.
And what's the worst part of not having clarity?
Worst part of not having clarity? Well, you question the direction you're moving in. If you don't have good clarity, I think for me, if I don't have good clarity, I'm second guessing myself. Okay, am I going down the right path at this moment? Am I focusing my time and energy on the right thing? So I question myself.
Yeah.
Versus moving forward with clarity and knowing that at this moment in time I am doing what I should be doing, that's going to be the biggest gain for myself and others.
Okay. So now, what is the best part of procrastinating?
Sometimes if you procrastinate long enough, the thing that you should have done is no longer important.
That's true. That's true.
And that serves me because I didn't get around to spending the time on it and then redoing something or...
Okay, so how does procrastination completely serve you? How does it really
It
serve you?
really serves me. I guess it would make me say, is this really important? Am I really focusing on the correct thing in the bigger picture?
Mm-hmm.
Which really gets down to what are all the things that are calling for my attention and prioritizing that.
Okay, so we'll go right into what is the best part about being frustrated? What's the best part about being frustrated? Because when you procrastinate, you immediately become frustrated.
That should be my key to stop.
Okay, but it's not, so why is it?
Okay.
So go to the illogic. So how is it being frustrated serving you? Because here you've talked about being procrastinated, overwhelmed, unfocused, frustrated, impatient.
So how is that serving me?
How does all of those coping mechanisms serve you?
Ooh, how are those coping mechanisms?
Because all behavior has a purpose.
Right.
If it wasn't serving a purpose, you wouldn't be doing them anymore.
Mm-hmm. I don't think how that's serving me.
Try closing your eyes.
Yeah. How does being overwhelmed, frustrated, what comes to mind, and I don't know if it makes sense or not, but there's signals or tools is not quite the right word, there's signals to myself to stop, to really take a closer look maybe, check in with myself, and get more clarity on these things that are causing those emotions.
Yeah, but getting on clarity is what is part of the coping here, right? It's remaining unclear. So the really interesting thing is that you say stop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I am looking for is that irrational behavior. But have a look at it. Is that what it is that you said what you really wanted was to be accomplished, right?
Right.
And if you got accomplished, the very thing is that you had a fear that there wouldn't be anything else.
Right.
So all of these behaviors are set up to get you more of what you don't want.
Oh, that's not good.
So
That's not good at all.
it's getting you to stop.
Okay.
It's getting you to absolutely stop your progression.
Wow. Which is what's causing me. Okay, all right.
So in order to get accomplished, you remain unfinished.
Another mind bender.
Right? So it's like,
Holy moly! That's amazing.
is that amazing? So
Okay, so can I book my appointment with you next week?
absolutely. So it's like driving the car with your gas fully down and your foot on the brake at the same time.
And your tires are spinning
And
and
your
burning
tires-
rubber. Wow, that is amazing.
Isn't that amazing? So that's all the stuff that's happening in your subconscious.
Wow, that's wild.
And that's your ego.
Yeah.
And that's now, from that point, you're right, because it's some people go, that doesn't make any sense. This is like, what do you mean to be accomplished and I remain unfinished? That doesn't,
Yeah.
and your brain, but there's a jolt that happens internally. I can see it
Yeah.
when you did it. And what it is, that's where we're going to start going in, and I would go and
Okay.
start doing the rewiring.
Neat.
And so one of the questions to help rewiring is, I would say, how familiar is that sense of being? Of That how familiar is that sense of that you want to go full out, but then you have to stop?
Mm-hmm.
And how familiar is that in your life?
Very. And does that, I have so many things I've started over my life.
Yeah.
Never finished.
Very
Get halfway
familiar.
down the road and going,
So from there, I would then really dive in and I would say, okay, so what's the earliest age that you've experienced that? And then I would start diving in and we would do a whole process on that piece. And
that is
and
very,
then
very
the content
cool.
of the work, what we then at this point do is we've dovetailed these wonderful rich modalities. We've taken the best of the best, what
Yes.
they've done in this process. And then we're going to dovetail them into one session that could be up to 4 hours long.
Right.
Can it be 2 to 4 hours depending on the depth of constrictions
Where you're at and everything else.
and how many constrictions and shocks a person has had in their life, and then we clear them out of the system, out of their central nervous system, and then we provide some guided imagery about replacing in what they want.
That is totally amazing. And I've been a self-help, follower, continual education for years. So I've never heard anything like this before. I'm very excited to try this.
I would love to have you.
Excellent. So that said, what kind of investment shall I be prepared for? Let's get to the root of the...
Yeah, so
That's what everybody wants to know. What's it going to cost?
you know what? Let's look at
Yeah.
that. So what is it? So that's why I really do talk about what is it costing you now.
Yes. Now that I'm
And
aware.
yeah, so what is it costing you to live your life the way you're living it right now?
Right.
And that really talks to, okay, can you afford not to
Yeah, exactly.
do some changes? Right? And so, when we talk about, financial is a piece, and the rates I have,
Vary,
they kind of vary, and that, there's a set point, but there's also this other piece of me that's a social worker, and that's not to say I'm gonna give away all my
No,
work
of course
all the
not.
time.
But you consider where people are
Yeah,
at.
so to give you the overall scope.
Yes.
Is a larger scope, as I mentioned, Don Smith does this work, and he's evolved it a little bit more into a program called I Am Technology.
Okay.
And this work originally designed, but it was initially worked with high performance athletes and
Okay.
Fortune 500 executives.
Okay.
So Don Smith, just to do the process of 4 sessions, charges $100,000. You're
But
right.
they can afford it.
But
People he's dealing with.
he's working, yeah,
And they-
because,
yeah.
and that's exactly it, right? Because if they were just to toss away $20,
Yeah.
they have all this cost, and it's like, so then they wouldn't come to the plate and say, this matters to me.
Right. They wouldn't see the value in it because it's only X dollars.
That's right.
Yeah, they're in a different zone.
That's right, so if you're a hockey player, and he has worked with, I think on his website shows Ignalius from the Calgary Flames. I
Yes,
think.
okay.
He's making umpteen million a year, well,
Yeah.
yeah, you need to put that
Yeah.
up. So, my colleagues in Vancouver, they charge $5,000.
Right.
And again, Vancouver, they're still
They're
working-
higher
they're higher,
income and-
but they can afford the property. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. You can live in Vancouver, you can
You can afford $5,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, but again, it's something. So what I did when I received the training, my background is in social work, which means what I saw in this was, well, why would I want to bring this tool to those people who still have all these resources? And why am I not bringing this tool to the general people?
Right.
So one of the very first things I do is I really want to work with somebody's income and say, at what price point do you stand up and take notice? That you're
Yeah.
not going, well, it doesn't matter that
Yeah.
I've just thrown away $100 because I just want to try.
Yeah.
Because at that point, the ego can really jump in and take control of the
Right.
whole thing. And the ego is a tricky character.
No, yeah.
And it's been in charge for many, many years, and its job was to protect you. And the very thing, and so all the things you developed, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Is that it was actually set into place to save you and protect you, and it worked.
It was a coping mechanism.
Yeah, and they worked. And we would map out each one of those coping mechanisms and clear them. But they worked well. But as you get older, they're now in your way.
Yeah.
And so that's what we want to clear, and we need to kind of work with the ego to kind of let it go.
Okay, that sounds fair.
Yeah, so the investment really is about how much will it take for you to stand up and pay attention to your work.
Right. And also keeping in mind that in the example we just went through, I am holding myself back from what I want, which is going to end up bringing me
Just exactly where you're at.
yeah, and money is a key thing for people. That's something that I'm sure gets cleared in most, or needs to be cleared for most people, because we look at our self-worth. There's so many people walking around that don't feel they're worthy, but they want that. So yeah.
And money really, as some of the big leaders, the thought leaders of today are really understanding, is money is a reflection of our sense of being.
Yes. So, based on this conversation we've had, which has been totally enlightening, thank you so much. I can't wait to get started. What was the way, we have had a lot of dialogue and a lot of conversation about this whole system, and your passion, which is very obvious, and your background, what you bring to the table with this. So I'm just wondering, if people were going to remember one thing from this that we just covered, what would be the key thing that you'd like them to take away from this and keep that seed germinating?
Yeah, the one thing that I truly want people to understand is that there just is an easier way of being.
Okay.
And that it doesn't have to be years and years and years of therapy to get to the point of feeling a sense of freedom, of getting unstuck from where they are. Being stuck is draining and tiring, and really it is a matter of letting go of the ways that we've been, and really it's that simple. And sometimes it's hard because we have a lot of things running in our subconscious that hold us back, and that's what we can really
It's almost
get
like
at.
getting off the hamster wheel.
It's 100% getting off that hamster wheel.
Yeah.
It's exactly.
Nothing against hamsters, but the wheel gets tiring.
And wheel gets tired.
The older you get, the more tired you get. Well, that's great. It's been so delightful, Bonnie, and I
Thank
really
you.
seriously want to explore this further with you, and I hope some of our audience will at least have a conversation with you and learn more about it. And
That would
it's all
be
good.
great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.